Be bold. Be brave. Be extraordinary. Be vulnerable. Be real. Be curious. Be true. Be you. Welcome to Trusting Your Gut with world-class energy intuitive Katherine McIntosh, a show designed to awaken you to enjoy the process of evolving, have fun along the way, and learn to listen to those silent in-between moments. You are the expert of your own life, and nobody knows more about the next steps to take in your journey than you. So please, listen to your gut and discover what's waiting for you to explore. Here is your host, Katherine McIntosh.
All right, my magical friends. So welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking and diving in to all things health related. And as always with this show, you can apply any of the information to any area of your life. And so today we're going to be talking about health, but this also applies to business. It applies to relationships. It applies to parenting. It applies to creating abundance in your life. It applies to allowing your dreams to come to fruition. But specifically, I wanted to talk about the health journey. And, I work with a lot of people from all different walks of life, from all over the world. And, it's one of my favorite things to do because I truly believe that almost anything is changeable. And where we get stuck or where we need to sort of fine tune things is recognizing where we've given up control over our destiny, over our choices. And so you might not be able to prevent a disease or prevent a diagnosis or prevent a bankruptcy, but what matters is what happens afterwards. And so today's topic, and I'm just going to pull up my notes, is what happens when the body breaks down and you no longer feel in control. And this is a really valuable, important tool because I work with tons of amazing beings. And then at some point in their life, they sort of come across a health challenge. And I work with all sorts of situations, all sorts of scenarios, not just health related, but specifically I wanted to dive in to health because what happens is when you have lived a great life and all of a sudden you hit a moment in your life where the body starts breaking down. So maybe you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's, or you've been diagnosed with cancer, or you've been diagnosed with, an autoimmune disease or MS or an autoimmune deficiency or a neurological deficiency. And my curiosity, because a lot of diseases, they say they're terminal, they say that there's no cure, and yet we have people who have proven to be able to navigate their disease into health, into vitality, into living. And I want to explore energetically what is the difference between getting a diagnosis and having that diagnosis run your life versus getting a diagnosis and empowering yourself to create a different journey moving forward. And so, as always, right, disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I'm not I don't have a medical background. I have an energetic background. I have helped people with diseases. I've helped people with diagnosis. I've helped them break through to the other side. And so I wanted to explore the energetics of what happens. So first off, when you get a diagnosis, it can be scary. It can be heartbreaking. It can be like traumatizing. You can apply this to, possibly going through a separation or a divorce. You can apply this to your business, maybe facing financial hardship. But we're going to stick to health for the sake of this show today. And so what happens when you get that heartbreaking news, it's like a punch to the gut. It's scary because your health really truly is is your wealthiest asset. Without your health, you don't really have anything, right? And as people get older in their life, they realize and recognize the importance of valuing your health, valuing your physical vitality, valuing your, nutrition, valuing, but most importantly, what goes undetected or under the radar that I personally think is the most valuable asset that we can sort of use to create more vitality as we begin to age, as we begin to get older, as things begin to break down. The biggest difference between those who end up sort of letting the diagnosis rule their life versus those who find a way to break through is the mental. Because I believe this is just my personal belief. Now, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not in the medical field. I'm just in the energetic field. And so, whenever somebody comes to me, what I look at is the diagnosis is a symptom, right? So it's what doctors are using to sort of diagnose and go, okay, you have this symptom, you have this symptom, you have this symptom, you have this symptom. All these symptoms, the prognosis most likely leans towards this disease, right? And then the person goes, oh gosh, I have this disease, so let me navigate the protocols that they say that you need to go on in order to fight the disease. But what happens is all of a sudden you get into a war with your mind and your body, right? With your spirit and your body. And I don't know about you, but there are no winners in a war. Doesn't matter, right? There are no winners in a fight, right? Unless it's maybe boxing, but still there's no winners. People get beat up and, all that stuff. And so what happens is all of a sudden we now adopt an identity that we have that disease, that we have that thing that's going on in our life. And guess what? The body, 60 to 76% water, water absorbs energy. So if you start to take on the energy of, I have this disease, the cells will organize themselves to prove that you are right. And I know it sounds counterintuitive and a little wacky and maybe like, oh, this is way too woo woo, but I'm telling you, it works. So when someone's diagnosed, right, the doctors are looking at the symptoms, right? Or maybe you're self diagnosing yourself and looking on Google and trying to discover what is going on for you. And then you go, okay, here's what I think is going on. So let me sort of throw at it all of these health possibilities. But what's happening is underneath the surface, no matter what you throw at the health possibility, underneath the surface is a foundation that feels broken, is a foundation with a diagnosis. And that diagnosis is sort of the mental train running the show. And so if someone says, I have Parkinson's, I have Parkinson's, I have Parkinson's, I have Parkinson's, the body begins to take on the energetic effect of Parkinson's, right? The body starts to take on the energetic effect of an autoimmune disease or of a thyroid condition or of a low metabolism because you keep mentally feeding your body that thing. And so when somebody comes to me, what I do is I look at, okay, great, here are the symptoms. What's actually going on? And whenever I see someone, I don't like to do research on the disease. I don't like to figure out what the doctors say. What I do is I go, okay, I'm going to scan this body energetically for what I think is happening. And there's a few kind of key components that is probably true in every diagnosis, which is there's a pattern that's been built up over time in the physical body that got created due to something that I believe was mental, emotional, physically traumatic, right? And that goes undetected for a very long time. We begin to build patterns around it. And then the build up of that energetically starts to shut the body down. So when the body shuts down, what it's basically doing is trying to get your attention that something is off in your life. Okay, I'm going to say that again. When the body breaks down, what it's doing is trying to get your attention that something is off in your life and you need to change. 95 plus percent of the time, it's a shift in perspective of your life. And so let me give you an example. Back in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was married. I was miserable. I didn't know it. I was working about 100 hours a week in real estate, and I was quite successful in the real estate business and having the time of my life in business and having the worst time of my life in my personal life. And I kept kind of ignoring it. And so what I started to do was adopt certain habits. I wasn't eating properly. I was, drinking tons of coffee, and then I would stay up late and, maybe have a beer or cocktail or several at the bar with my friends because I was avoiding going home to my husband, right? He was off doing things he shouldn't have been doing. And all the while, right, my body started to break down and I started to get really sick. 9 months of going to doctors, getting scans, doing blood draws, urine samples, stool samples, pokes and prods. And the doctors kept guessing. We think you might have this because these are the symptoms you have. We think you might have this because these are the symptoms you have. And then they'd send me off with a prescription or a sort of health prognosis of what I could do different to improve my health, to maybe get things out. And nothing worked. And I got worse and worse and worse to the point like there were days where I didn't know how I was going to get out of bed. There were days that I was doubled over in so much pain that I could barely function. I wasn't eating because I couldn't even stomach like any food. Everything created so much pain and no one could figure it out. And so, desperate, and some of you have heard this story before, but desperate, I went to a healer and I laid on her table and I was like, I don't know what's going on. Doctors can't figure it out. And so, fully clothed, she put one hand on my lower sacrum area, lower back area, and one hand on my belly. So, she had both of her hands, right, sort of in my midsection. And she just asked as I laid on the table with eyes closed, and she asked, like, what is your gut know? What does your belly know? What does your body have to say about what's going on? And it was the first time since getting married that I was like, I don't want to be married. I'm not happy. I'm actually miserable. I'm scared for my life. And so what happened is this particular relationship that I was married, right? It brought up stuff from my childhood that recreated and replicated the trauma I experienced as a kid. Now, I don't know a single person on the planet that gets off and out of this life, right, without some form of trauma living in their system. And I believe there's some fundamental sort of things that happen to us, and we either don't feel like we're enough, we don't feel safe, so we adopt survival instincts. This puts our nervous system in fight or flight. And guess what? When our nervous system is in chronic fight or flight, we cannot heal. And so I work with a lot of women who struggle with their body image, weight, food. And I'm always like, it's not about the food. It really isn't about the food. It's the fact that your nervous system might be in chronic fight or flight, right, since childhood. And someone actually reminded me of Gabor Mate the other day. So Gabor Mate is sort of a trauma specialist because he dealt with his own trauma growing up. And I believe he was born during a wartime. And so he came out of the womb constantly and chronically in survival mode, not feeling safe, what sets your nervous system up to literally not be able to relax. Well, when you can't relax, the body can't do what it was naturally born to do, which is to heal. The body's natural state is to heal. So every 24 hours, 864 million cells in the body, million. I mean, this is fascinating. 864 million cells in the body die, while 864 million new cells come in, right? And so when people go, I have this thing, what actually starts to happen is they feel like they are at the effect of their diagnosis. They are a victim to their body breaking down. The body's breaking down not so that you become a victim, so that you actually, excuse me, chew, whew, chew, whew, excuse me. The body's breaking down, excuse me. Wow, there's a lot of energy on this conversation. The body's breaking down to wake you up that there needs to be both a mental shift, an emotional shift, a physical shift, and an energetic shift. And so when I was married and I had that session, and it was the first time out loud I admitted to myself and anyone else that I was scared for my life, that I didn't feel safe, that I was miserable, right? And that I secretly wanted to leave the marriage, but I was, right, born in an Irish Catholic family. You don't really get divorced. It's a bad thing, right? And here I was completely miserable, pretty much replicating my childhood and in a different way, right? My parents did the best they could. They were actually incredible human beings. They just didn't know how to do life together very well, which created a lot of trauma for us kids, right? And so the point is that when you start to relate to anything in your life, you start to relate to your body like you're not in charge, right? You start to relate to your relationship like you're not in charge. You start to, or you don't have a say, or you don't have control, right? You start to relate to your finances or your business like you're not in charge. I don't know any CEO that would be successful long term if they didn't take charge in some way. And so I've worked with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, successful CEOs. They end up taking over companies that maybe aren't doing so well, and they're in charge of turning the business around. And the way I like to look at a body is the exact same way. If your body starts breaking down as if it were a business, you'd go, okay, let's fix it, right? And you'd start to go, I'm in charge. But what happens when a disease gets diagnosed, we go, oh, the disease now is in charge. The difference between someone that heals that disease and doesn't heal the disease is the person who takes charge of knowing that something can shift has a much better chance at turning their situation and their circumstance and their life journey, has a chance of turning that around and creating a different life, right? I've had so many people come to me and they're like, my doctor says I have a year to live. My doctor says I have 2 to 5 years left. You know, the doctor says that in 3 to 6 months, I'm not going to be able to function. And that can be one of the scariest moments of a person's life. And it is then, right, an invitation. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not even saying that it's right. But what I am saying is that I believe that we have to start looking at health differently. And we have to start looking at, if you only have one body in this lifetime, you're only given one body, right? And when the body dies, right, your soul goes somewhere else. if you're only given one body in this lifetime, don't you think that one, you're the only one who can be the expert of your body? Really, truly. You can invite, certain experts to maybe educate you, to give you information, to possibly point you in the direction that will lead you to where you want to go. But at the end of the day, right? You are in charge and you know more about your body than anybody else, right? You're the one that's been there since day one. You're the one that's been there since inception. You're the one that's been there since birth through one, two, three, four. And the body remembers energetically. It might not remember logically, right? Might not remember mentally, but the body remembers energetically. And I believe that almost all diseases are a buildup of unaddressed trauma, right? Are a buildup of things that get in the way, are a buildup of a bunch of different things that sort of short circuit the body's ability to communicate, to connect, and to thrive instead of just survive. And so I know it's a really big topic and it can be really scary for a lot of people, but I'm here because I believe that almost anything is changeable. I believe that if we start to take charge of whatever conditions we're dealt, right? If we start to take charge of our current situation, if we start to see that we are empowered to be able to turn it around, then as a whole, as a society, we're going to have a much better chance at thriving. Because in the cave age days, they didn't have all these diagnoses, right? And like in an animal's life, if you look at animals in the wild, they live, they live, they live, they live, they live, they live, they live. All of a sudden, something happens. And within a very short amount of time, they go off and they die. They don't spend 10 years suffering in the wilderness with a dis-ease, right? They don't spend 20 years, right, going to doctors and, shaman hyenas, right? No, but and why? Because animals don't function from judgment. And I think this is a huge distinction that we need to make. Animals, I'm going to say this again, animals don't function from judgment, but humans do. And so I believe that most diseases have a foundation with judgment in it. So the judgment that you're not enough, the judgment that you don't feel safe, the judgment that life isn't okay, the judgment that you were dealt an unfair hand in life, right? I believe that we're all dealt certain levels of trauma and certain circumstances so that we can sort of break through and thrive. And who knows why? I mean, I have my theories. I won't get into them today on this show. Who knows why we're dealt the hand we're dealt? I believe that at some point we choose it. Some people might disagree with me, but we go, oh, well, I'm this infinite being with all this potential and all this magic and all this power and all this awareness. And I'm connected to everything in the universe. And I'm going to come into a human body and show humans what's possible. Well, we get to planet Earth, we get into human body, we get, childhood traumas and parents that don't support or understand us or all these things. And all of a sudden, over time, it starts to wear us down and we give up. We give up and then we get stuck in something that we chose. Right. And I don't know about you, but I truly believe that we were put onto this earth not to survive, not to have a mediocre life, but to truly begin to break through and see the beauty of the human condition instead of the curse of the human condition. And your body, just like any other body on the planet, it has the potential to thrive. But guess what? It's got a teammate. called your head, called your thoughts, called your words that you speak, called the ways that you look at things, the things that you brush underneath the rug, right? All of those things add up. And if you are living 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years stuffing something that's been in your body since childhood, eventually it's going to break down the body. So I believe that the key to healing is to recognize, one, that the body is a conscious entity, right? That can flow as we flow, right? That if 864 million cells every 24 hours die and 864 million new cells come in every 24 hours, we have the potential to turn around our health quite quickly if we can change this, if we can get to the root of the belief. And so the other day I was working with someone and they were like, oh, I have this belief that everybody's against me, right? Like I had this belief most of my life that nobody liked me. Which I find really funny now, knowing who I am and what I do in the world and how many people that I connect with. And, it just really, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world is to make an impact in people's lives, to have that like connection, true connection where you see another being, they see you, and you help them transform something that they didn't think they could ever transform. And so the point is, my friends, life is short. It's not easy, right? It is not always easy. But the good news is that you're not a victim to your circumstances. You can shift your perspective. You can start to empower you to be sort of the forefront at the leading edge of what you can create, because there are so many examples throughout history in which two people have the same dream, right? The same vision, the same sort of idea for what they want to create in the world. One does it, the other doesn't. What's the difference? Their mental point of view of what they think they can accomplish. Right? I'm a big dreamer. I got big dreams, and sometimes I've got to keep them to myself because not everybody can support it. Not everyone can see the vision. And guess what? It's not their fault. They're just trying to protect, right? They just want to keep you safe. They just want to like support you. But for those of you that are big dreamers, you're like, yeah, I don't feel supported. That's not support. So the point is, if you are out there with something going on in your life that feels really scary, I want to invite you to become your own private investigator, to go underneath the surface to see what's true for you. And the quickest way I know how to do that is to begin to ask yourself some hard questions. Right, is to begin to recognize that you can be in charge of your vitality, that you can take over, right? Just because a business is failing doesn't mean it has to fail, right? Like Marcus Lemonis, I used to watch his show all the time, right? Where he would take over businesses or he would help people, right? Come in and he'd turn the business around. Anything is changeable if you're willing to change your perspective. So you aren't a victim to your health prognosis. And we'll dive in a little bit deeper with a little bit more, possibly share some questions that you can start to ask yourself, but also sort of give you some things that you can begin to do right now to start to empower yourself to take over so that you no longer feel at the effect of what is happening to you. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break.
Times TV.
Do you trust you? Do you trust your body? What if the key to unlocking the weight, pain, suffering, fear, anxiety, addictions, traumas, and sorrows was already inside of you. Learn to love the skin you are in so you can create the body, business, and life you love. Everyone always says you can't explain what Catherine does, you just have to experience it. From Hollywood actors to New York Times best-selling authors to some of the world's wealthiest and most successful, no two experiences are the same. For private sessions, online courses, live events, and the latest book Jack Canfield calls Game Changer and should be required reading for everyone, go to CatherineMcIntosh.com. CatherineMcIntosh.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
All right, my magical friends. So we are back from the break. Thank you for joining us. As always, every week we bring you a show on a different topic every day. But I really believe that, it's sort of the topic that I've been obsessed with my whole life, because I also know what it's like to not feel like I am in control of my body, to watch my body break down, to have an eating disorder and a body image issue and body dysmorphia. And I spent a good 20 plus years at the effect of my body, right? And I tried to use my head to control my body. It wasn't until I did a few specific things that things began to turn around. And the biggest thing is I had to admit to myself that I was a very gifted intuitive when it comes to bodies. And so because I was so gifted, but I didn't know it, when my body started breaking down, I took it personally, thought there was something wrong with me. But what I actually do believe is when our life starts to fall apart in certain areas, it's the universe and our body and whatever else trying to wake us up and poke us and say, hey, you think you have a problem in this area. What we're trying to get you to see is you actually have a gift, a capacity, an aliveness, an experience. You gotta open the doors to a totally different world. And so if you are going through something scary right now, I kind of want to give you sort of some things that you can do, some shifts in perspective, and some practical tools that will support you beginning to realize, right, that everything is changeable. So number one, you got to hire yourself as the CEO of your health, right? The CEO of your body. You got to hire yourself and go, okay, I'm not a victim. I'm going to turn this energetically around. That's number one. Number two is you have to stop labeling the diagnosis. Honestly, you have to stop labeling the diagnosis. You have to stop telling people I'm fat. I have a low metabolism. I have a a hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, or I have kidney disease, or I have liver failure. You just want to literally stop repeating. And that also applies to in your head. So some people go, "Oh, well, I'm not telling anybody." No, but you're freaking out about it in your head 24/7, which is also not going to help your case. It's not going to help your health journey, right? And so you really have to stop labeling it, and you have to start to adopt a belief that you can get behind that feels true, right? Wow, my body's breaking down to empower me to shift my life. Great. Wow, my body is inviting me to shift my life. I don't know which direction it's inviting me to go in, but I'm on a mission to figure it out. And I know a lot of people, like in their 20s, if they've gone to college or they haven't gone to college, there's that moment where they're like, what do I want to do with my life? And there's always a moment in everybody's journey that they go, I don't know what the next step is. And I always say to them, perfect. Then you're exactly where you need to be. Right. But the beauty is, instead of going, oh my God, I don't know where the next step is, I'm a victim to not knowing the next step, you go, okay, I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of my body. I'm in charge of my finances. I'm in charge of my relationships. I'm in charge of my destiny. I'm in charge of where I want to go. And I'm going to hire myself as a CEO. I'm going to let go of the prognosis or the diagnosis. And I'm, number 3, going to begin to relate differently to what's going on in my body. Instead of saying, I have, right? I have stage 4, testicular cancer, or I have stage 3 breast cancer, or I have a tumor in my throat. Instead of saying that, you go, wow, my body is showing me, right, is inviting me to empower myself to take charge of my health, right? My body is showing me, inviting me to take charge of my health, right? I'm on a health journey. I'm healing every day. I'm learning new things every day. I'm getting better every day, right? So the shift in perspective, because what truthfully begins to break people down is that mental idea that they're no longer in charge and that the disease has taken over. Right? I truly believe, I could be totally wrong. And I'm sure there's somebody out there listening who either has a loved one that couldn't beat a disease, right? Or they're currently battling something that they are really struggling with. And I get it. This isn't to minimize it. This isn't to, um, bypass it. This is to invite a different conversation so that we can wake up to a different way in which we navigate our health journeys, because we're all on them, right? As we all get older, we're all on them. And some people just tend to do it better. And so, what I believe one of the fundamental differences in those that do it better is they recognize the gift of not being so angry, not being so judgmental, not being so tight in their ways, and releasing, right, the way they thought life should be, and opening up to the way life actually could be from a completely different perspective. And so when I was uber sick, doctors couldn't figure it out. I was working in a real estate office, doing pretty damn good. And I started to get stressed out and started chain smoking cigarettes. And there was a woman at the office who also was a chain smoker. And so we'd go out, and on breaks, we would smoke. Well, this woman, right? Even though I've had a very interesting life, a traumatic life, a lot of interesting things have happened to me, right? All things that I voluntarily chose to go through. The I've had a pretty positive outlook on life. I always think like everything's changeable, everything happens for a reason. I can like change anything, and everything that happens to me just makes me stronger. Right. And this woman that I was a coworker with had the worst attitude of anyone you've ever met. And so at first I could see that she had a negative attitude. I'd be like, oh, ha, 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 ha. Okay. But after time would be chain smoking cigarettes and she'd be talking smack and she'd be looking at everything from sort of a judgmental negative viewpoint. Well, guess what? I started to get sick because I started to adapt and adopt to her energy. And so most often, right, in any room in the world, anything on the planet, there's a vibration, right? And unfortunately, negative vibrations get more attention. So a kid who gets, raised by his parents, the kid starts to throw temper tantrums. Why? Because the parents start paying attention. Because if the kid's quiet, they ignore him, right? And so generally in the history of life, the darkest energies, the most negative energy, the loudest energy in the room gets the most attention. And generally, that is a negative energy, right? Or just like a dark energy or whatever it is. Whereas the light, even though it can be the highest vibration in the room, gets the least amount of attention. And so, what we've been taught as a society is to pay attention to the negativity, right? To fix the negativity, to transform the negativity. But you can't really transform negativity by fighting negativity. You have to let in the light, right? You have to let go of the heaviness, let go of the darkness. And so, if you've ever noticed, right, you go into a restaurant and let's say a couple's having a fight. You're like, oh, you can feel it in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Simultaneously, if somebody's having a party and there is laughter and good music, it's like, whoa, I feel that. But most often, we can walk into a room in a high vibration, and if somebody's having a dark day, we go, let me lower my vibration. Well, that's exactly what happens with dis-ease. You might be having a lot of really good moments in your life in a high vibration, but all of a sudden your health starts to go. Guess what? All this positivity goes to focus on the negative, right? Which doesn't heal the problem. And so when I was working, this woman started to be so negative, and that over time, I had one of my good friends pull me over and she goes, I don't know what's going on with you, but you are not yourself. You are falling apart. Everything out of your mouth is negative. And I was like, it took somebody who loved and cared about me to show up in my face and reflect to me how I was showing up that I wasn't even aware of. And I went, whoa, time for a change. And I quickly turned it around. And it was during that time I was sick. And then I went to a healer. I started turning it around. I started shifting my perspective. I started relating to my dis-ease differently. And within a few months, my entire life turned around, right? I ended up realizing it was time to file for a divorce, leave the marriage. I moved to Colorado. I actually went to grad school because I was so fascinated by the mind-body connection and our ability to heal. And so when you are delivered a diagnosis, all of a sudden the heaviness in the room takes over. The darkness takes over. The problem solving takes over. And what I want to invite people to do is, how can you look and go, okay, this disease, like my friend who got in my face and was a mirror reflecting that I was no longer being myself, diseases, diagnoses, they go, hey, here's your body showing up in your face to let you know you're no longer in alignment with your best self. You're no longer being the best version of you, and your body's breaking down to let you know. And so when most people and the body breaks down, they go, oh my God. And I go, right? Almost dropped an F-bomb, right? Darn. right? When the body breaks down, I go, oh, right. And great. Now we have somewhere to work with. How do we let the light in? How do we get rid of lifetimes of negativity, of bad perspectives, of judgment, of bitterness, of anger, of resentment, of shame? I believe that almost all diseases are a buildup of shame, resentment, fear, anger, frustration, hiding abuse, not feeling safe, not feeling good enough. And when you can dig underneath the surface and go, oh my God, I have a childhood wound that's been there the whole time and I didn't know it, it starts to change. And obesity is a disease, and obesity is rampant, right? And a lot of people say it's because of the food. Yeah. Like the processed food is not good for us long term. Eating McDonald's every day, not good for us. Not walking and exercising, not good for us. Staying addicted to a computer screen or a gaming screen, not good for us, right? Our bodies are meant to be in nature like a wild animal. Our bodies are meant to move energy. Our bodies are meant to feel the sun and be under the stars and hang out with the night sky and be in the mountains and hug a tree. Like our bodies are swim in the ocean, get in a river, right? Our bodies are meant to be out in nature. They're not meant to not be exploring outside, and our bodies are meant to move energy. And so if you are stuck with a trauma from childhood that all of a sudden you have shame, you have resentment, you have anger, you have fear, you don't feel safe, and that is living in your system every day, making your nervous system and your reptilian brain start to go in fight or flight, right? All of a sudden your amygdala starts to be in fight or flight, your pineal gland starts to sort of fog up and cap over, which can create health issues, right? The thyroid shuts down, the liver and spleen aren't digesting the toxins properly. Like it's a whole thing, and everything's connected. Everything's connected. And so when the body breaks down, it's literally this invitation to go, hey, are you listening? Something in your life needs to shift. And it might be your marriage, it might be your perspective, it might be your spending habits, it might be the silent judgments you believe about yourself that are actually lies, because all judgments are lies, right? They're not true. Anything that makes you feel heavy or not good is a lie. Right? Anything that contracts your energy is a lie. And I'm sorry, but getting a health diagnosis that's like, hey, you have stage 4 cancer and you have 6 weeks to live, that's like, it's a contractive energy. But if the doctor goes, hey, here's what the diagnosis is showing, right? Then we go, okay, cool. What is the energy that's killing your body? What's the energy that's breaking your cells down? Because it's not the cancer that's breaking your cells down. The cancer is the symptom, right? It's the byproduct of the symptom. And what we want to do is we want to find the root cause. It doesn't have to be painful. It can be really easy. And so my favorite thing for people who are going through sort of a health crisis is the first thing you want to do, right? Besides the things that I mentioned, right? So you want to take control, become the CEO. You want to let go of judgment, right? You want to also stop labeling yourself as the diagnosis, right? And you want to start to open up a possibility that this is designed to empower you to become the best version of yourself, to get you back in alignment. And so those 4 things you want to do. And then the 5th thing that I think is the most important that people underestimate is regulating their nervous systems. Almost all of us are probably in a chronic fight or flight, right? Hey, can you wait like 5 minutes, please? Thank you. Are in a chronic fight or flight. You can come say hi. This is my little monkey. I've been raising an 11-year-old, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. Every day is a different day. Today I didn't get it so right. So we're working on it. But the point is that when you regulate your nervous system and you focus on regulating your nervous system and you do some somatic movements to get the nervous system going, right? To release trauma out of the body without having to talk about it, because talk therapy sometimes only makes the trauma worse in the body, right? You can begin to open up the door to your healing journey. And so without a regulated nervous system, especially the parasympathetic nervous system, because when the parasympathetic nervous system isn't regulated, chronic fight or flight, the body cannot heal effectively and efficiently. It just can't. Right? You can heal for a moment, but then the dis-ease comes back, right? Or the thing comes back. And so for all of you out there, what if shame is not wrong? What if guilt isn't wrong? What if regret isn't wrong? But what we want to do is go, okay, I'm going to make friends with this emotion that I keep stuffing. What if it's no big deal? And what if it's my journey through to my health instead of the journey that breaks me down? And so I hope you find this information useful, helpful. I hope you enjoy listening to this. All I got to say is you're not wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with you. And yes, you might be dealing with something that can be scary. It's an invitation to go, hey, something in you, in your life, in your body, in your spirit, in your thoughts is out of alignment. And so, my friends, one day at a time, one shift in perspective at a time, 1 degree difference, right? When sailors are out at sea, 1 degree difference on your path can end you up on a completely different continent. And so I want to invite you that you can do 1% shift, 1 degree shift, which will start to open the doors to a totally new way of living. All right. If you'd like more information, you can check out my website. I do have a free Healing Your Nervous System download, which has some really great information in there. And I believe it's the beginning to a whole different perspective. I got tons of classes that will help you. I also do sessions privately, in person, or long distance, Zoom or phone. And I just really believe that it's possible to change the things that, other people might say it's impossible, because people have done it. And what's the difference? The way that they start to view it. So, my friends, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, share it with a friend, share it on social media, like and subscribe. As always, you can always send us an email. And just thank you for being part of this journey. May it touch you. And I hope to see you next time. So, bye for now.
Catherine is not a medical practitioner nor a licensed therapist. She has strong opinions and will express them, and truly believes that you are your best advocate for any and every area of your life. If you need medical advice, please consult your physician.